Hello, we are going to be in our social studies or history notebook, and we're going to be on slide number 51. Now, this is going to talk about a lot of things we've already learned about, but it'll be a good refresher. So, like usual, we're going to go to the side and read this first. The Chinese created the sailboat rudder, which is what will direct it. It's underneath the boat and it directs the boat. Manufactured steel and made paper from wood pulp. They made medicinal advances, so medicine, like what became known as acupuncture, which is placing needles on various spots of the body to treat ailments, and it doesn't hurt. Miss Daisy actually had this done. They invented herbal medicines and also traded in spices, tea, and porcelain. Porcelain is what some fancy plates and cups will be made out of, and herbal means that it is made from plants as well. Now, gunpowder is also said to have been discovered in ancient China, but not until the Tang Dynasty in the 9th century CE. Mandate of heaven. This is something you guys will already know. The mandate of heaven, where the rulers of ancient China believed that they were destined to rule by the mandate or a command from heaven, aka the mandate of heaven. The ruler was considered the link between heaven and earth. He was expected to be virtuous, have virtue, so be good and just, and rule to please the gods. Ancient Mandarin and Confucian scholars influenced Chinese kings to honor the mandate of heaven by taking care of the people. Family came first in Chinese society. You were responsible for your family above all. So, first and foremost, family is the most important. You also had a duty to respect the head of the family, your parents, elders, and ancestors. The idea called filial piety, filial meaning the relationship between children and parents, and piety meaning respect. Extended families lived together: mother, father, children, cousins, uncles, aunts, grandmothers, great grandmothers, great great grandmothers, and so on and so on. There could be as many as 5 generations living together, and maybe people from age 1 to 100. The early Chinese practiced ancestor worship in homage, or an expression of high regard or respect, to their deceased family members. We've already kind of talked about this, so that shouldn't be super confusing. Now, based on this, let's move these over. So, going through, think about which ones you see. I'll give you some time. Hopefully, you have put over gunpowder, which we realize right here is from the Tang Dynasty. I will accept paper because they were the first to have it from wood pulp. They had also silk. And they had a standards weights under the Qin Dynasty. You know it'll bug Miss Jace if this doesn't all line up, because she is only, slightly cuckoo bananas. Sewage, if you remember, is the Indus Valley. Sailboat, Mesopotamia. Same with plow and writing. The water wheel is going to be Egyptian. Toilets, Indus Valley. The minute, Mesopotamia. Okay. We are going to be saying which explain Chinese script through the ages. So you should know the original one, but how has it changed throughout history? As we load, I am going to be in 810 if you would like to read along with me. Ancient Chinese writing. People in ancient China began using a written language about 3,000 to 3,600 years ago. During this time, the Shang family ruled China. A family that ruled for many years is called a dynasty. The writing that developed during the Shang dynasty came from how people used bones to predict the future. Remember what this is. Some historians say there was a writing system even before the Shang. Markings and symbols were found on pottery in the Panbo village. The markings were from over 2,000 years before the Shang. Other historians say these markings were just used to show who owned things. They say the markings aren't a real written language. So this, does it count or not? Up to you. However, most historians agree that Chinese writing really started with the Shang dynasty. Having a system of writing had a major effect on China. The government started using written records. People began writing down their thoughts and feelings in poems of other types of writing. This is what they used it for. That's cool. Bones and the future. People in ancient China thought it was very important to know about the future, so they would go to a diviner. A diviner is someone who claims that they can interpret or read certain signals to tell what will happen in the future, like a fortune teller. During the Shang dynasty, a diviner could carve a person's question into an ox bone or turtle shell. The diviner would heat the bone until it cracked. Then, the diviner would interpret the lines of the cracks to answer the person's question. For example, a king might ask whether he should go hunting. The diviner would carve the name of the king and the date into the bone. The diviner would also carve the topic, hunting, and a specific question, should King blank go hunting tomorrow? The bone would then be heated and the lines of the cracks interpreted. After the answer would be carved into the bone, yes, the king should go hunting tomorrow. Later, the diviner would carve whether the answer was correct. The king went hunting and was successful. In the Shang period, almost everyone went to diviners for advice. After the Shang dynasty, the Zhou dynasty was in power for about 800 years. During the Zhou dynasty, diviners stopped using bones to predict the future. Instead, they used the I Ching, a book of changes, which is about hexagrams. A hexagram is a six-pointed star. The diviner used the I Ching to interpret the pattern of sticks thrown onto a table. With both bones and the I Ching, people believed that their dead ancestors were speaking directly to the diviner. Changes in writing. From these early beginnings, Chinese writing evolved or came about. These forms of writing were Changjuan, I might be butchering them, heads up, the earliest form of writing on bones. It is about 3,600 to 3,000 years ago. This writing was pictographic, or made up of pictures of people or things. We did this kind of like the hieroglyphics. For example, if you would want to write, should the king go hunting tomorrow, you would carve an image of a king with his bow and sunrise. Dazuan, known as the Great Seal script. It was created about 3,000 to 2,700 years ago. It was also pictographic writing, but had pictures for more than one things. The pictures were done in metal, bronze metal, and wood. Xiaoxian, known as the Lesser Seal script. It was developed 2,700 years ago. It is still used today. It is different from earlier Chinese writings in the marking represented ideas or concepts, not things. For example, if you wanted to write, "Should the king go hunting tomorrow?" you would carve the image for the king and a sign which represented hunting and tomorrow. Lishu, known as the Clerky script, was developed about 2,500 years ago. It was first used by people who kept records in government called clerks. People mostly stopped using this writing about 1,800 years ago. The effects of the writing system. The writing system had important effects on the way Chinese society developed. Mastering the writing skill was difficult. Few people could master it. The people who did had an important skill. They were thought of as more important than the people who could not read and write. They would become scribes, and you're going to notice a lot of the times in history, those people who are literate, so people who could read and write, were considered part of the aristocracy or the upper class. This changed in 1949, so not that long ago. That year, a military leader named Mao Zedong took over China. He wanted to make China a more equal country, so he made the Chinese language more simple. The Chinese writing system was used by Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. Having a written language allowed China and these countries to communicate and keep record. It also allowed them to create the most important works and poems in the world. So you are going to make sure that you do your quiz where you answer 4 questions with at least 4% or 3 out of 4. Oops, I gave you a correct answer. We're not going to look at that. Whoopsie daisies. Hey, you at least got one right. You are then going to race your response. How has it changed and what are the different evolutions? After that, you are good to go.